Welcome to Edge Leadership and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the show. It is show number 84, and excited to be back with you and be back on here on Education, Leadership, and Beyond, hashtag ELB. Would like to welcome in our listening audience live on Facebook. We're headed to iTunes, Voice Ed Radio Canada. Welcome to all our Canadian listeners, and certainly our audience on Disrupt Ed TV. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for being part of the show. For all those that love the intro music, I had some technical difficulties here, and I did not get the music queued up, so I apologize for that. But thanks for tuning in, everyone. We're going to get started here in a moment. Today's guest is Dr. Robert Zayas. We're going to meet Dr. Robert here in a moment. He is the New York State High School. There's my mom watching. Hey, Mom. He is the New York State High School Director of High School Sports, the Athletic Association. He is the statewide director, and we're looking forward to talking to Robert about leadership, high school sports, and the amazing story of how he got his doctorate. So we're going to meet Robert here in a moment. A quick shout out. I would like to recognize today's sponsor, Rocketbook. I was just showing Dr. Rob about the Rocketbook and what it can do for you. So I just met Dr. Robert today, and we're going to take some notes during the show. So what Rocketbook is a reusable notebook. And if you're busy like me, if you're someone that's busy, if you're a school leader, certainly Dr. Zayas is busy being the director of the New York State High School Athletic Association. But if you're in meetings, your to-do list, all of that, you can put it right here in this notebook, and you can designate where you would like it to go. So I have these spots here. These are all my different Google Drives, emails, text message. You just mark the bottom of the page, and it'll go there. And then when you're done, you could just wipe the page down. So it's amazing. I'm really happy with it, and I'm really happy that Rocketbook is working with me and sponsoring the show. Murata20 is the discount code. You can get 20% off Murata20. Go to rocketbook.com and check out the different size books. I got the full size, and it's really a great tool. So if you do want to use that discount code, punch in Murata20, you'll get 20% off your purchase. And the big one here, I forgot the price, whether it was between 30 and 40 bucks, somewhere in there. So I love it. So thank you to Rocketbook. Well, let's get started. Talking high school sports, talking high school athletics. And while we have Dr. Zayas on the program here, if you do want to leave us a question, please do so. Kelly Daughtry's on there. We'll get to see who that is here in a moment. But leave us a question. Leave us a comment. We like to interact with our viewers here on the show, and it's an interesting aspect of being live. So please do that. So in preparing for the show and getting ready for Dr. Z, I was thinking about high school sports, right? If you're a high school educator, if you're a school leader, why are those sports important for the kids? And what does it bring to the table for those student athletes? I was a high school athlete. My mom is watching. I got to play high school basketball at the historic Xaverian High School in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, home of the Clippers, home of Chris Mullin, our most famous basketball alum. And it was a great experience, right? I remember my parents taking me to all those games all around New York City, and just a tremendous experience. But why is high school participation in sports so important? We're certainly going to ask that question to Dr. Zayas, but I jotted down just a couple of thoughts. Number one, exercise and fitness, right? We hear so much about teens today and being on the phone and not being active. When you're involved in sports, man, I was at my Port Jervis Raiders track meet yesterday, and man, jumping hurdles, jumping the high jump, the long jump, throwing stuff. It was crazy. It was amazing. Tough loss to Monticello, but it was awesome. So number one, exercise and fitness. Number two, competition, right? It's important for kids to compete. It's important. We're in that generation now of everyone gets a trophy, but you know what? When you're battling for first place and you're working hard and you want to beat that other person, those are life skills that are very important. And certainly in high school, it gets more competitive. So not only the competition against another athlete, but that competition to make the team. I remember in high school There was 100 kids that tried out for my freshman basketball team, and they only took 12. You talk about competition, and it's going to be just like that when you go for a job interview. So those things are very important in terms of competition. The next thing is being part of a team, right? Learning to interact with others, learning to share with others. Maybe it's not all about you. Maybe you are sitting on the bench, right? I sat a lot on the bench, and who knew it would help me in my officiating career later in life. I heard a great story recently about being on a team. So the story goes like this. A gentleman from New Mexico, car breaks down and it slides off the side of the road, and it's kind of stuck in a ditch. And he sees this gentleman with a mule over in the farm. And he kind of waves to the guy like, "Hey, man, could you help me?" So that the farmer comes over and says, "Hey, what's the problem?" And he says, "Yeah, my car is stuck here. Do you think you could give me a hand? Maybe we'll try to push it out." He says, "Oh, old Henry will pull it out of the ditch." Well, sure enough, old Henry comes over, and this guy is looking at him like, "Oh my God, you're going to pull my car with that mule? Like what?" And he says, he ties it to the bumper, gets the straps, and he says, "Go ahead, Henry, pull. Go ahead, Michael, pull. Go ahead, Jimmy, pull." And sure enough, the car started moving, and he pulled it right out of the ditch. And the gentleman was like, "Wow, how'd you do that?" "Well, that was amazing. Thank you so much." "Why were you calling 3 different names when there was only one mule there?" And he said, "Well, old Henry's blind. And if he thought he had to pull that car by himself, he probably wouldn't have done it. But when he knew he was part of a team, it was no problem." So take that story and use it as your own. That's a great story about teamwork. And my last point, the last 2 points about high school athletics, success and failure, right? So much of that happens today with kids devastated when they don't get it. They don't make it, right? The tears, the this and that. Playing sports, you learn about success and failure. Never getting too high, never getting too low, right? When you win the game, there's not an overjoy or over celebration. So success and failure. And lastly, kids that are involved in school do better in school. We all know that, whether it is high school sports, music, the mock trial club, whatever it is, kids that are involved in school do better in school. And certainly I think high school athletics are part of that. So as school leaders, as educators, support your student athletes. When they have a game, go to the game. Greet your student athletes the next day at their door. Ask them how they did. I had a number of the track kids tell me today they got their PR. They like to say that, "I got my PR, personal record." So awesome. So let's support our student athletes. And let's also meet today's guest on the program here. I'm going to scoot over, and we're going to welcome in Dr. Zayas. Doctor, come on in. It's nice and cozy here. Get my rocket book out of the way. All right, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Here. Appreciate it.
Dr. Rob was here in Orange County this morning and in New York, and he's heading back to Albany, so we're on a tight schedule, and I appreciate you coming on the program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate being here.
So Dr. Zayas, he is the director or the executive director, fancy, of the New York State Public High School Athletic Association. He is responsible for nearly 800 high schools and over 600,000 student athletes in the state of New York. He has taught, he has coached, worked in high school athletics in Texas and New Mexico, and now he's a director here in New York. That's a mouthful, Dr. Rob.
It is. It's interesting. There's 51 high school athletic associations in the country, and it really is an honor and a privilege to serve as one of 51 executive directors. When I got the job here in New York almost 7 years ago, I was the youngest out of all 51 executive directors, which is both an honor and a little scary at the same time.
Certainly in New York, too.
Definitely. Yeah, we're the third largest high school athletic association in the country. So there's some obstacles and challenges that certainly come with such a big state with so many schools and so many student athletes.
Okay. And Dr. Rob, looking at your job, I know there's a lot there. If you had to break them down, like what are your responsibilities being the director?
Yeah, I mean, number one thing we're known for as a high school athletic association is we run state championship events. So when people attend a state championship event, they recognize our branding, they see our banners, it's on the tickets, it's on the medals, it's on the shirts. So that's probably the thing that we're most recognized for. But our main responsibility, in addition to running state championship events, is creating all the rules and regulations that the student athletes abide by, all the way from the actual playing rules up to eligibility rules that students have to abide by, or schools have to abide by, when a student might be moving from one school to another, as an example.
Yeah. And do you work with the National Federation of High Schools to adopt those rules?
We do. We abide by NFHS rules in the majority of the sports that we play by. Right now, we do have a few sports that don't abide by NFHS rules, but the majority of the sports that we have do play by NFHS rules.
Okay. So, for example, with concussions in high school football, and we're in a legendary town known for football, changing the rules about helmets and safety and all of that, is that something that would come to your desk, that a meeting that you might be in?
Most certainly. I'm meeting with an assembly member here on April 30th. We have representatives coming in from USA Football in Indianapolis to meet with the assembly member that is looking at some legislation to impact football. So I tend to deal more with lawsuits and more with legislation and insurance issues than I do with individual coach issues or questions. But that's just my role. I do have 8 additional staff members that they get the privilege of working more with those coaches or more with those athletic directors. But a lot of my responsibilities deal with the legal side and the legislation that we're involved in.
I mentioned in the opening, Dr. Zayas is from San Antonio, grew up in San Antonio, spent some time in school in New Mexico. You were going west, and now the jump back to New York. Tell me about how you wound up in New York from there.
Well, I taught and coached in Central Texas for 3 years and went out to Albuquerque to go to graduate school. I was interested in getting a master's degree in sports administration, showed up in Albuquerque. I had been doing triathlons in Central Texas as well, and experiencing a little bit of success. And what I mean by success is go to a race and place 3rd overall and make $50. Well, at the age of 22, 23, you consider that to be successful. Oh, right. Yeah. So
make a living out of it.
Exactly. Yeah. At the age of 22. So went out to Albuquerque to go to graduate school and train for triathlons. And the reality set in after about 3 or 4 weeks that probably wasn't going to be able to sustain itself for very long. So I started looking for a teaching job and coaching jobs, and one day went to 15 different schools with resume in hand. Wow. In an effort to try to find a job. But it was already late August at this point. No schools in the Albuquerque area were hiring. So I resorted to the newspaper and started looking for jobs in the newspaper while I was going to graduate school, and just happened to stumble upon a little classified ad for the New Mexico High School Athletic Association. They were looking for a promotions person for the association. So I applied for that job. Actually didn't get that job. They hired somebody else, but there was a communications position open. So they needed somebody, and I had just interviewed, and I guess I could talk my way through an interview. So they went ahead and offered me that job, and that's ultimately how I got started in this business of high school athletic administration. Now in my 17th year, spending 10 years in New Mexico and 7 here in New York.
Okay. And how did you see about this opportunity in New York, way out in New Mexico? Yeah,
well, anytime a job opens up for a director's position throughout the country, our national governing body always emails out everybody in the country. I knew the former director, Nina Van Erck, from committee that I had served on with her. So I reached out to her after reaching out to my wife first and saying, "What do you think?" But
good move.
Yeah, well, I try. I reached out to her and said, "What do you think? Would I even have a shot at it?" I didn't know anybody in the state of New York, had no prior contacts with anyone, and understanding that some of these jobs throughout the country, or I'd say a lot of these jobs throughout the country, can be a bit political. Mm-hmm. So understanding that, I told my wife, I said, "Don't worry about it." I said, "I'd be the youngest person in the country to get the job. We don't know anybody. It'd be a great interview experience if I could go ahead and at least get an interview and see what happens." And about a month and a half later, we accepted the position. I say we, my wife and I, and moved our family to upstate New York. So it's been an adventure and a journey ever since.
And it's refreshing to hear that story. I'm here in Port Jervis 15 years now from Staten Island. I didn't know anybody either, and kind of felt like, yeah, there's no way that this is going to happen because you have to know someone, maybe an in, get your foot in the door, something like that. So it's refreshing to hear that you got that position coming from not someone who was someone's neighbor or something.
Sure. I think the association wanted maybe just a little bit of a different perspective on things. And that's what I still try to do, even after 7 years, is bring a different perspective each and every day. I'm constantly looking at what's happening throughout the country. How is another state handling this issue? At times, I think it can be a bit annoying because it seems like with a lot of issues, I'm able to bring a national perspective to it, to say, well, on this one particular issue, I know people in Arkansas, or I know the director in Texas, or I know what they're doing out in California. So I try to bring those perspectives because I think it's beneficial when we're trying to solve an issue that we're not recreating the wheel, that there's been states that have done these things, have really faced these challenges before, and maybe use some of the things that they've done, or maybe some of the mistakes that they've made, to ensure that we're not going to make those same mistakes.
Yeah, that's smart to connect with other people that might have done it. Again, if you're watching the show live here on Facebook, or even if you're watching it after, you want to leave a question for Dr. Zayas or myself, please do so. Dr. Zayas, you heard the opening comment about athletic participation and the benefits, and you actually commented that that was part, or your dissertation with your doctorate. What were your thoughts on the opening comment?
I think the number one thing that I found in my research on the topic of the benefits of high school sports is that kids gain a sense of belonging right away when they participate in a high school sport. And it doesn't matter what the sport is. Track and field, swimming and diving, football, they gain that sense of belonging. And that's so beneficial for kids these days, is to have a core group of friends that they can rely upon right from day one. And I think that's the number one benefit that I see from high school sports. The more we can give those kids a sense of belonging, the greater their attendance is going to be, the better their grades are going to be, the less discipline problems that they're going to have in school, because they have a group of kids, a group of teammates to rely upon each and every day. Even though it might not be in season, they're developing those friendships, and they're more comfortable. They're more apt to want to come to school.
Yeah. Wearing the jerseys in the hallway, there's a sense of camaraderie, teamwork, making friends, traveling, right? Yes. Just had Glens Falls, upstate New York, the hoops thing. Is the girls' teams there? Do the girls go to Glens Falls? Where do they
For the Federation Championships, they do. Yeah, but for the NISFA State Championships, the girls are at Hudson Valley Community College. The boys for the last 3 years have been out in Binghamton, but to the happiness of the Glens Falls community, the NISFA State Tournament is coming back to Glens Falls starting next March.
It's rich traditions.
It was a very rich tradition.
Yeah.
And I completely understand why.
Cool. Robert, how about in your role as director? Again, you're new to New York. You're not new anymore. We'll adopt you as a New Yorker here. But tell me about your leadership, bringing a different perspective, as you said. How do you use your leadership skills in your position?
Well, I just think, there's, I try to be patient, and I try to be persistent. And I think those two qualities right there. And lastly, positive. A mentor of mine back in New Mexico by the name of Scott Evans, he taught me those 3 Ps. And I think those are important things to always be aware of. Being persistent, being patient, and being positive, I think are 3 leadership characteristics that if you start each day with those 3 Ps in mind, you're going to have a good day. I think being positive is probably the most critical aspect of that. I mean, each and every day, there's so much going on with your job, with my job, with probably anybody listening. We're overwhelmed at times, but finding the ability to be positive, and regardless of whatever we're working on, I think is something that one characteristic that I possess that I think helps me when those days get to be pretty challenging.
I like those. My wife says sometimes it's annoying, but I'm going to say no, it's persistent.
Hey, I've been. That's I just had an opportunity to spend a little time with my father, and I think I've been persistent since I've been a little kid, and maybe that's the reason why I was able to get the position here in New York, is that that persistent characteristic that I seem to always possess, but I don't look at it as a negative as much as maybe a positive.
Yeah, no, it's driven, and it absolutely is. Just talking with you, you certainly look the part, you speak well. All of those are fitting in. we talked a little bit again in our pre-show meeting here about you're an early guy. You use your time in the morning, and I'm learning so much from leaders in the show. One of the things I've learned is the importance of their mornings, their morning routines, their daily routines. Tell me a little bit about a typical morning where maybe you have a meeting a couple hours away. Tell me about that morning time for you.
Well, I mean, if I have a meeting a couple hours away, if I have a meeting in Buffalo or have a meeting down in Long Island, I try not to spend too many nights on the road in a hotel if I don't have back-to-back meetings. So for our state championship events, obviously, I might be in Buffalo for 2 or 3 nights for the ice hockey championships. I'm obviously not going to commute back and forth. But if I have a one-day meeting or a few-hour meeting in Long Island or Buffalo, I'll drive out and back. So it's not uncommon for me to leave my house at 4 o'clock in the morning, drive out, and then spend some time with our athletic administrators in whatever part of the state it might be, and then turn around and drive right back. I always say that my wife and daughters don't mind if I'm sleep deprived as long as I'm home for dinner. So, and I think that's an important aspect of the way I like to operate. Is my family's my number one focus. But I understand my responsibilities, and I don't take those lightly by no means. But I certainly want to be home, and I want to be home for dinner, and I want to be there for my kids. And so if it means waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning after going to bed at midnight, then that's just what I do. And maybe drink an extra Mountain Dew on the road. But I think that's a typical morning if I'm on the road. If I'm not on the road, I like to wake up early and get stuff done. My kids make fun of me that I don't sleep, but I have a funny quote that there's 2 types of people in this world: those who are successful and those who enjoy sleep. So I think I it's kind of a funny way of looking at it, but I look at it that you gotta be willing to wake up early, and you gotta be willing to put the work in. And a lot of times if I fall behind on email, then I will wake up early, and sometimes way too early. Yeah. But I think that's a great time of the day to kind of get caught up on things, to get organized, and really get the day planned out.
It's quiet.
The
girls aren't awake yet.
The girls aren't awake. The dog's still sleeping. And when I send out 20 emails, I don't get 20 responses back. So
they're not ready for you. You can send them and go.
Exactly.
It's interesting talking with you about that balance, about having young kids. And who's here? Brooke is telling you don't sleep ever.
That's my wonderful wife right there.
Okay, yeah. You agree, Mrs. Zayas, huh? But it's a balance, right? Your own personal wellness. I'm going to ask you about that in a moment. And the balance of spending time with your family. One of the things I've learned is about being present, right? When we're home, we got to put these things away, the phones, the computers, and be present, right? Because your daughters aren't going to remember that daddy was good at his job. And, I've learned that. And my youngest is always asking, Daddy, when am I going to see you again? Or when are you going to be home again? And that's powerful. That's important in those hours, to get that work done.
Oh, it definitely is. I look at, just how busy we all are as high school administrators or athletic administrators and what I do. And I think it's important to keep that balance and understand what the balance is, and not just say it, but actually model it and show it. It's crazy to think that my family and I have been in New York already for 7 years, and how quickly those 7 years have went, and how quickly the next 7 years are going to go. So before I know it, my oldest daughter is going to be off to college, and my youngest is going to be on the verge of going. And you're absolutely right. They're not going to remember how great I was at responding to 300 emails a day as much as maybe what I was good at cooking for dinner.
Wow. Robert, let's talk some more about your job. Like, what are some initiatives that the New York State Public High School is working on that you got your hands in right now?
Well, one of the things that we're constantly looking at is how can we make our handbook easier? A lot of times the rules and regulations of our association can be complicated. They can be confusing. I'm really making a push at how can we make them simple and sustainable rather than convoluted and confusing. So we just modified one of our practice rules in February, and met with athletic directors today in Section 9. And they're happy with the change because it's going to make the rule interpretation from their perspective a lot easier.
Go ahead, give it to us. What was it about?
Right now, in the past or at the beginning of the spring season, in order to represent your school, student athletes and teams, you needed a certain number of practices as a team to scrimmage and a certain number of practices as an individual to scrimmage. And then to make it even worse, then we said you need a certain number of practices as a team and a different number of practices as an individual in order to play a game. So we had these 4 requirements that just made no sense. And they were different for every sport and even different from the varsity level to the modified level. And I asked the question, why are we making it so difficult? Why don't we just look at it a simple and sustainable approach? So again, looking at what other states do, did a couple national surveys, gathered some data, and we just modified the rule, which I'm excited about, is now it's just 6 practices to represent your school. No differentiation between the scrimmage or the game. It's just 6. Now, there are 4 sports, football, wrestling, gymnastics, and baseball, that will require 10 practices to represent your school. And that's more of a safety issue. But in looking at that, that's a good example of taking what's happening throughout the country, taking what other states are doing, using it to our benefit, and saying, why are we being so complicated? Why are we making it more than what it needs to be? And that's another thing I really enjoy doing, is asking questions of why, and really trying to figure out, this rule was put into place maybe 40, 50 years ago. We're still abiding by it today. Is the rule still beneficial to our schools today as it may have been in 1975? And what I'm finding is a lot of the rules that are in place that we have maybe worked 25, 30 years ago, but they're not working for the current athletic administrator that's dealing with different challenges that they couldn't have even perceived to encounter 25 years ago.
Yeah, and being in New York now, you've learned about snow, right? 25 years ago, they didn't cancel school like they did. Now, on the weather, they're looking at the thing, they cancel it, especially here in New York. It's crazy, but that's a great example. Yeah. And
also, I mean, one thing that I talked about today in Goshen, where the athletic council was for Section 9, was our transfer rule. Right now, when a student athlete transfers, they transfer without a corresponding change of address, meaning that they're not moving with their parents. They didn't actually physically move into the school district. We declare those student athletes ineligible in all sports for the period of 1 year. And the question I'm asking is that the best thing for kids? If they move without their parents, they move in with their older brother, maybe there's issues around that. But we spend a lot of time right now on waiver requests and appeals associated with a sub-varsity student athlete that has no intentions of playing at the varsity level. They're athletically not capable of playing at the varsity level as a freshman or a sophomore. We spend a lot of time on those kids. And the question that I'm asking is, why? Why don't we make our transfer rule restricted to the varsity level? And if a student's going to move without a corresponding change of address, deny them eligibility at the varsity level, but allow them to play at the sub-varsity level, allow them to practice with the team. It integrates them into the school district. It gets them that sense of belonging that is so critical, and it brings them into the school community. But it also has zero impact upon another school's opportunity of winning a section championship or winning a state championship. So really making the transfer rule and focusing the transfer rule on the varsity level, which I think has been the intent all along. But again, not making it so complicated.
My wife, I see your wife is watching here. My wife likes that tidying show, the woman on Netflix here. But it sounds like you're taking things that aren't any good or old or don't bring joy to your life, and let's get rid of them. Right? Those are smart changes. I like that. And it's again refreshing to hear that somebody at the top who's making the rules is asking that simple question, like, why are we doing this?
Well, and I think that's one of the things when you say being at the top, making the rules. I can advocate for things and I can bring things to the attention of the membership, but I don't have a vote. And, I had somebody tweet at me earlier today, why would you allow this to happen? And it was a pretty easy response back to the individual when I said, it's the membership who drives those initiatives. I can ask why, and I can propose as many things as I want. But at the end of the day, the membership is going to be the one to vote on it through our process. They're going to decide whether the transfer rule is revised or not. They're going to decide those practice requirements, if those are revised or not. I don't have a vote. And I think that's the right way it should be. But I think as the executive director, it's my responsibility to bring attention to these issues and then allow the membership to go ahead and take action.
Great answer, Dr. Ram. I know you were just at the Final Four out there in Minnesota. He was tweeting out some pictures. You went to the three-point shooting contest at a high school. And, there's a lot of attention in the NCAA, certainly with the spotlight of the NCAA tournament about sportsmanship. on the behavior of the coaches, behaviors of the student athletes. Tell me about the high school level, sportsmanship in general. Is that something that comes across your desk a lot?
Oh, it certainly comes across my desk a lot. I think one of the things that we teach through athletics is that we're preparing kids for the next level of their life. We're not preparing kids to the next level of competition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sportsmanship plays a huge role in that. Is, how are you going to react to an official's call? How are you going to react to an opposing athlete saying something or doing something? Because however you react today as a junior or senior in high school, probably going to flow over into how you're going to act when your employer tells you something that you don't necessarily like, or a colleague of yours makes a comment that you don't necessarily appreciate. We're teaching lifelong lessons in athletics, and I think sportsmanship plays a huge role in that, as to how you're going to respond to things later on in life. So I think that sportsmanship issue is something that we as a high school athletic association and the membership of our association focuses on quite a bit.
That's great to hear, and I agree with you. Right, the way that kid acts on the court probably transfers into his life. We see that in the classroom.
Definitely.
Yeah. And that's cool. How was the Final Four?
Oh, it was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
My first time ever going, just to be in a football stadium, US Bank Stadium, that seats over 70,000 people.
Yeah. 72 was the
72,000 was the attendance. It was just an incredible experience. And then I got the opportunity to go to probably 3 of the best games in tournament history. It was just it was a great experience.
Cool. Minnesota was a good host?
They were. Yeah. Never been there before, but
okay.
it was a nice place.
And I think it's about 61 here in Port Jervis today. I think they're getting snow out in Minnesota. So if you're watching out there, hang in there. The spring's coming. Yeah. How about AAU? I know that it kind of goes back and forth between a tumultuous relationship, certainly in basketball. Is that something that the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, what's that relationship like?
I mean, I wouldn't say that we have a relationship. I think a lot of attention is constantly focused upon comparing us as a high school interscholastic association to AAU. Yeah. And one of the things that I try to bring attention to is we're not AAU, nor do we want to be. Mm-hmm. AAU, I don't think we spend enough time promoting the things that we have that AAU doesn't. AAU doesn't have media coverage. AAU doesn't have parades when you win an AAU national championship. That's one of 19 national championships throughout the country in the month of July, for example. AAU doesn't have pep rallies. They don't have principals like you that'll be doing crazy things during a pep rally or something like that. They don't necessarily have community or that fan base that follows them around and will make banners. So I think we need to spend more time not talking about us, comparing us to AAU, but really saying why we're not AAU and why we don't want to be. We have all these great things happening in interscholastic sports that we should be proud of and we should promote, and we should focus on that we're preparing those kids to the next level of their life, not focusing on trying to get them a college scholarship, because that's not really our role as a high school athletic association. And
you hear so much about the negativity of the leadership, of the coaches, of the guys with the shoes, and just so much negativity, whereas, you're such a role model of leadership. That was a great answer.
But I think one of the things that we also have to be aware of is AAU does do a good thing of giving those kids an opportunity to play at times when they're not playing interscholastic. So it's not that AAU is bad. There's a lot of friends of mine that coach AAU or organize leagues and organizations within the AAU community. But again, I think we have to look at why we're not AAU and why we don't even want to be considered in that same realm with AAU.
Doc, I've said Dr. Zayas multiple times, and I know that's only relatively new for you, but you have a great story about how you got your doctorate and how you tried to get it done. They say, how do you move a mountain? One rock at a time. So tell me about your time management in terms of getting your doctorate.
Well, it took me 11 years to get done from start to finish. The very first class I took, my oldest daughter was a month old. When my second daughter was born, about 3 years later, she was a week and a half old, and I found myself in a statistics class, advanced statistics, for the very first time in my life. So, getting through the coursework was tough. Getting the comprehensive exams was challenging. Getting the dissertation done was near impossible. So the story that I like to tell is every time this time of the year, because of work and because of our winter state championships, I tend to get a little out of shape. I don't work out as consistently as I should. So a few years ago, my wife teaches group fitness at our local YMCA, and she does a great job with it. And I made the mistake, and I emphasized the mistake of going to her class. And the date was January 25th. I'll never forget. Went to her class, and she completely annihilated me. She teaches like a real fast, up-tempo HIIT class with weights and jumping and stair stepping, and I laid on the ground after she finally got done with about an hour of the class, and I thought, you know what, that was a great workout. I need to get more consistent with my working out. So I told my wife as we drove home, I said, I'm going to start working out every day. And again, that persistence that I have, my kids were just making fun of me the other day because I have a tendency of overdoing it a little bit. So I told my wife I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to just work out 30 minutes. Just 30 minutes a day. It's not an hour. It's not 2 hours. Just 30 minutes a day. And I'm going to get into shape this winter is what I told her a few years ago. And I did that. And so even through the winter championships, I was on Staten Island for our indoor track and field championships. I had to be at the Ocean Breeze Athletic Complex at like 6 a.m. So I found myself in the hotel gym at 3:30 in the morning on an elliptical machine, get my workout in for that day. And after 75 days of working out every single day for at least 30 minutes, I told my wife, I said, if I can work out every day for 30 minutes, why can I not work on my dissertation? Because I hadn't started the dissertation. I had started a few times, pitched a few proposals to my committee, but never really got going on the dissertation. Every time I'd talk to my committee, they'd ask me questions I didn't have answers to. They'd bring up variables and factors that I wasn't considering. I'd get discouraged, put it away, and a month, 2 months, 3 months might go by before looking at it again. So I told my wife, I said, if I can work out for 75 straight days, 30 minutes a day, how much progress could I make if I just do my dissertation for 30 minutes a day? And see how many days I can do. It's not going to get done with 30 minutes, but you know what? It's going to move me in a positive direction. Mm-hmm. And I think so seldom in life, we don't look at the impact of 30 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day of any routine and just start moving in a positive direction. So I started doing it. Some days I'd pick up research and I'd be sitting in the parking lot waiting to pick my daughter up from gymnastics, and I'd be reading research because that's the only time I had for that day. And I'd read research and I'd look at my watch and read research in 28 minutes, 29 minutes, 30 minutes, put it away and on to the gymnastics carpool I go. Other days for the dissertation, it would be an hour. And on some weekends, the 30 minutes would lead to 5 hours. And slowly but surely, I made progress. And ultimately, using the 30 minutes a day, after 367 days, and it'll be a year tomorrow, I completed my dissertation and successfully defended it. The workout streak ended at 382 days when my wife and I went to Rome, and I just finally said, I can't work out for 30 minutes a day in Rome, nor am I going to try.
Drinking the wine.
And then 367 days on the dissertation streak. And I really think that's the way that the dissertation got done, is just one, by getting my butt kicked by my wife in her group fitness class, but also by just looking at it as not a dissertation, but as just 30 minutes today, and not as a document that was going to, consume close to 150 pages, but it was just 30 minutes for today. What can I get done today that's going to positively impact tomorrow? And by doing that, just slowly but surely, it ended up getting done. And I'm now trying to get back on a workout streak because I work out for 4 or 5 days and I take 4 or 5 days off. Yeah. So I got to get back into gear. But, that's ultimately the story as to how I was able to get done with a document by having a family, having a job that's a bit time consuming at times, and then also trying to get a dissertation completed.
That's a great story.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I'm inspired, right? Because who can't find 30 minutes a day? Well,
and sometimes the 30 minutes a day comes at 3 a.m. When I was doing the 30 minutes of working out and 30 minutes of dissertation and driving to Buffalo for work, that's where it got a little crazy, because I'd wake up at 3, work out for 30 minutes, then do dissertation for 30 minutes. Some days it was probably closer to 29 minutes, but I stretched it to 30, and then, get ready and then drive to Buffalo and back. And I knew, I just know the way that I operate. If I went to Buffalo and then came home and then had the kids and had dinner and had carpool and had homework that I'm trying to help with, although my kids probably don't want me helping them with their homework. That's another story. But I knew I wouldn't do the workout. I wouldn't do so it was just being disciplined and trying to move every single day in that right direction.
We like to say, make the important thing the important thing. So
Definitely.
Kudos to you and congratulations. And
thank you.
I'm inspired, man. That's cool. Speaking of time, we know we got to get you. You have an obligation in Albany, New York. So we're going to get you out of here. Let's go to rapid fire. Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Buckle up. Here we go. Last book you read.
Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. Great book.
Great book. We talked a little bit about the red shirting. Great book if you haven't read that. Last movie you saw.
Wasn't my choice. Mary Poppins.
Hey, don't knock Mary Poppins. We took my daughter on Broadway. Don't knock it. Favorite place to travel?
I'd say probably the trip that my wife and I took to Rome about a year ago.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Incredible
city.
Yeah.
The wine's not bad.
It was good.
You lived in Turkey a year too when you were growing up.
Yeah, my father was in the Air Force, so we spent about 2.5 years in Ankara, Turkey.
Very cool. The greatest challenge in your work?
Probably just keeping up with the amount of emails and trying to make sure that I'm responding to everybody's needs as quickly as I can. I think that's important to me, is to be responsive.
Talk to text?
I talk to text, yeah.
I do a lot of talking in my email.
Got to.
Yeah. I got to. Something that motivates you is?
My kids. I think, that's one big thing that was nice when I got done with my doctorate, was to have my daughters there to watch me walk across that stage. Nice. And have them old enough that I think they could truly appreciate it and remember it.
Nice. A pet peeve of yours is?
Rude people, I guess. Just I don't really think that there's any reason that you shouldn't treat people the way that you want to be treated and respected.
I don't want to get you in trouble being here in New York, but coming from Texas and New Mexico, the percentage of rudeness, I'll let you pass on that. But I know where I grew up. We could be pushy sometimes, Best purchase under $100 that has had the greatest impact on your life?
Yeah, that's tough. Maybe my running shoes. I got my wife bought a pair of running shoes for me. I ultimately ran the New York City Marathon in November.
Cool.
I think it had everything to do with the shoes.
Nice. Yeah. That's the Spike Lee's line.
Exactly.
Shoes, man. All right. You want to share the brand here? You going to keep
I think I was running in Adidas.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah, I didn't run very fast, but I ran.
Hey, it's all about finishing. I know your next purchase under $100 that's going to impact your life. We're going to get a little commercial again. Rocketbook.
I think I'm going to get that for my wife. Yeah,
we're going to get it. Use that discount code Murata20. Something about the New York State Public High School Athletic Association that people don't know.
One big misconception or misperception out there is that we're a state entity, that I'm hired by the governor, or I work for the governor, or I have an office at the state capitol. We're a nonprofit organization. We're not a state entity, so to speak. So we're a nonprofit 501c3. We really receive no direct funding from the state of New York.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, cool. Besides your job and your family, what is something that you are most proud of?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think just being able to do everything that we've done since getting to New York. It's not often that you can just pick up your whole family and move 2,000 miles away and accomplish that the way that we have. And I think that I take a lot of pride in that. It was certainly a risk. We had a great life in New Mexico, had great friends in Albuquerque, and to just pick up our whole life in the matter of about 5 weeks and move to somewhere we had never really been or spent a great deal of time and have it turn out as well as it's turned out. I certainly am proud of that.
Cool. Was your wife from Albuquerque?
No, she's from Topeka, Kansas. So we didn't really have any family in Albuquerque. So it made it leaving a little bit easier, but it certainly was a challenge.
Okay. Something that has been a personal or professional hurdle for you?
That's tough. I probably have to rely upon that dissertation just for how long it took to really get going on it and to be able to get that accomplished. I still consider that to be one of my greatest feats.
Something about New Mexico that a New Yorker would not know about?
I just think how blue the sky is and how windy it is in the spring. It's amazing how windy New Mexico gets. in the spring, late afternoon, you could have 50, 60-mile-an-hour winds.
Get out.
And as the coordinator of the track and field championships in New Mexico, that always became a challenge of trying to keep everything grounded in mid-May during the championship season.
And what is that called, the windy season? What is it?
I have no idea. Maybe it has something to do with the elevation. Albuquerque is one of the highest metropolitan cities in the country. It was windy. Short-term personal goal, 3 to 5 months. 3 to 5 months. I think probably just get through the school year, get the kids successfully through the school year, and host state championship events this spring. Baseball, softball, track, golf, tennis. We have boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse. It's growing. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. My school, the baseball and lacrosse, we're not there yet, but there's chatter. Long-term personal goal, 3 to 5 years. If you're focusing on personal goals, 3 to 5 years, I have daughters that are 8 and 11. So I'm forecasting that the teenage years are probably going to be a little challenging with 2 girls. So for a personal goal, from that perspective, I'd say just mere survival. Teenage, yeah. God bless with those daughters. What are their names, Doc? You want to give a shout out? Gabriella and Olivia. All right. If they're watching, girls, thanks for Dad loaning us Dad here for an hour. We're going to get them home for dinner. Robbie, you did a great job in the program today. How can people get in touch with you or learn more about the New York State High School Association? Yeah, follow me on Twitter. You can actually go on our website and get my cell phone number, which is kind of rare. But wow. I consider that I want to be accessible. And if somebody has a question for me, I think, having my cell phone number readily available, some people might consider that to be a little dangerous. But again, I think the public, our schools, coaches, administrators have a right to be able to get a hold of me when they want to or need to. So my cell phone's on our website, but I'm pretty active on Twitter. Don't have anything to do with Facebook. My kids created an Instagram account for me. I don't know how to use it. So I'd say our website and my Twitter account is probably the best way to keep in touch. Okay. Very cool. Dr. Zayas here. And you gave a great quote before, those who are successful and those who enjoy sleep. Do you have another quote that you live by? We like to end the show on a quote. I think I'm always looking to improve. So I believe Winston Churchill said, to improve is to change, to be perfect is to change often. And I think that's one thing that I'm always looking for is I hope we're not the same high school athletic association today that we're going to be in a decade. I'm constantly looking for ways to improve, to tweak things, to modify, to revise, to amend. And I think when you're constantly focused on improvement, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have challenges. You're going to have, experience obstacles, but you're also going to have improvement and have progress made. So I think always looking for ways to improve is something that I focus on, and I think it's benefiting our association, and I'm hopeful that it benefits the student athletes that I work on behalf of. I like that. To improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often. Dr. Zayas here on Education, Leadership, and Beyond. You did a great job. Thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate you having me. We're going to give one more commercial. Here's my notes. I wrote down a lot of great stuff from Dr. Zayas. I'm going to mark this here. And with Rocketbook, it's going to go right to my Google Drive or my email. So a shout out to Rocketbook for sponsoring the show. If you are interested in purchasing it, Murata20 is the discount code. You'll get 20% off. We're going to sign off here. If you're a leader, a parent, you're watching the show, the importance of participation in high school athletics. Dr. Z said it great, right? Being involved, the power of belonging to the group and feeling inclusive. Definitely. Yeah. So thanks to Dr. Z for tuning in. If you like the show, leave us a positive review on iTunes. I'm on Twitter at Andrew Murata21. And Dr. Z, one more time on Twitter. Just RZayasNY at Twitter. New York, baby. All right. Signing off, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in.